Lorenzo Ashford's hand trembled as he knocked over the chessboard. The wooden pieces rolled across the dirty pavement of the square, and he didn't even look back. The driver was already opening the door of the imported car while Lorenzo laughed into his phone, talking about a multi-million-dollar deal. The 11-year-old girl, barefoot and wearing a patched dress, stood frozen on the ground. Her small hands touched the pieces of the broken knight, the one her grandfather had carved before he died. Natalia swallowed her tears. She couldn't cry there, in front of everyone. The sun burned her brown skin as she gathered the pieces, one by one, as if she could reassemble not only the wooden knight, but also the memory of the man who had taught her to see the world through the 64 squares of the board. "Leave it, child." The hoarse voice of SEU Tobias, the newspaper vendor from the corner, broke the silence. He approached with difficulty, leaning on his cane. "A man like that doesn't deserve even your glance." But Natalia couldn't let go of the broken knight. That piece carried her grandfather's voice, the afternoons on the rotten wooden porch, the lessons that went beyond the game. "The knight is wounded, my granddaughter, and precisely because of that he knows paths the others do not." He always said that, running his finger over the cracks in the piece. Now, those cracks were far too real. SEU Tobias helped gather the other pieces. The queen without a crown. The bishop with a chipped tip. Rooks that looked more like candle stubs. Even so, Natalia played every day in that square, challenging anyone who passed by. She earned a few coins, sometimes a snack, other times only the silent respect of those who stopped to watch. That morning, she had beaten 3 adults in a row. Until the rich man passed by. "You're not going to give up, right?" SEU Tobias asked, already knowing the answer. Natalia shook her head. She wiped the board with the sleeve of her dress and began positioning the pieces again. The broken knight stayed to the side, leaning against the leg of the old chair where she always sat. A reminder. A reason. The hours passed slowly. The square filled up and emptied. Natalia played with a university student and won. She played with a retiree who thought he was a master and won again. Her stomach growled, but she didn't leave. She never left before nightfall. It was her promise to her grandfather. Then, when the sun was already beginning to yellow the sky, 3 black cars stopped in the square. The movement drew attention. Doors opened. Men in suits got out first, looking around like security. And then he appeared. Lorenzo Ashford. The same one who had destroyed her board that morning. But now he was not alone. Behind him, a small crowd formed. Reporters. Cameras. Important people. Natalia felt her heart race. "Is it that girl over there?" Lorenzo pointed without hiding his contempt. "The one who stays playing chess all day?" One of the guards confirmed it. Lorenzo walked toward her with long strides, his hands in the pockets of his Italian trousers. He stopped in front of the board and let out a short laugh. "I heard you're good. Really good." He spoke loudly, so everyone could hear. "My partner made an idiotic bet with me. He said you're capable of beating anyone. Even me." Natalia raised her eyes. She didn't answer. "So I'm going to make you a proposal, little girl." Lorenzo pulled out his wallet, full of golden cards and bills she had never seen up close. 200 million if you beat me at chess." The entire square seemed to stop breathing. "And if I lose?" Natalia asked, her voice steady despite the fear. Lorenzo laughed louder. "If you lose, you never play chess in this square again. Never again. Take these wooden pieces of junk and disappear from here." SEU Tobias took a step forward, but Natalia raised her hand. She looked at the broken knight beside the chair. She thought of her grandfather. She thought of her mother who washed clothes until dawn. She thought of her younger brother who needed medicine. She thought of everything that 200 million could mean. "I accept," she said. Lorenzo sat down on the plastic chair on the other side of the board as if it were a throne. The cameras moved closer. Natalia could feel dozens of eyes on her, but she forced herself to look only at the pieces. White for her. Black for him. "You can start, little champion," Lorenzo said, checking his expensive watch. Natalia moved the pawn. Her hands did not tremble this time. She had played 1,000 matches on that board. She knew every stain in the wood, every irregularity. Her grandfather always said that a real player doesn't need perfect pieces, he needs perfect vision. Lorenzo played fast, confident. Natalia responded slowly, calculating. The crowd grew. People stopped on their way home. Shopkeepers came out of their doors. Even the children who were playing on the other side of the square approached in silence. And then, on the 15th move, Lorenzo realized something. His eyebrow furrowed. He looked at the board more carefully. Natalia had built a trap so subtle that he hadn't even noticed stepping into it. Impossible. He murmured. But it was possible. And while Lorenzo tried to find a way out, Natalia already saw the checkmate. There were only 6 moves left. She could feel it, as her grandfather had taught her, the weight of the silence before victory. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Leave a comment saying what you thought and which city or country you are watching from. Your participation makes all the difference. Night fell over the square, but no one was leaving. Lorenzo Ashford was not a man who lost. He never had been. Since childhood, when his mother cleaned offices at night to pay for his schooling, Lorenzo learned that winning was the only way to escape poverty. He won at school. He won at university. He won in business. And now, sitting on that lousy plastic chair, facing a barefoot girl, he felt something he hadn't experienced in decades: fear of losing. "You're taking too long," Natalia said, her voice calm. Lorenzo raised his eyes. The girl didn't take her gaze off the board, but there was something in her posture that bothered him. Confidence. Not the arrogance he saw in the executives at his company, but a quiet certainty, almost irritating. He moved the rook, trying to force a trade of pieces. Natalia responded immediately, as if she already knew what he would do. Her bishop cut across a dangerous diagonal. Lorenzo felt sweat begin to form at the back of his neck, even with the cool night breeze. "Where did you learn to play like this?" he asked, trying to break her concentration. "My grandfather," Natalia answered without taking her eyes off the game. "He must be good." He was. "He died 3 years ago." The words fell like stones. Lorenzo hadn't expected that. He looked at the girl again, really looked this time. The patched dress. The feet dirty with earth. The calloused hands of someone who worked. And even so, she was there, playing chess as if she had been born for it. For a second, Lorenzo saw someone else in that place. His mother, coming home from work at 3 in the morning, her hands cracked from scrubbing floors. She never complained. Never cried in front of him. But Lorenzo knew. He had always known. "Check," Natalia said. Lorenzo blinked, returning to reality. His king was cornered. It wasn't checkmate yet, but it was close. Very close. He moved the king to the only free square, buying time. "Do you know who I am?" Lorenzo asked, his voice lower now. "I do," Natalia moved the knight. "The man who destroyed my board this morning." The sentence cut like a razor. Lorenzo opened his mouth to respond, but couldn't find the words. It was true. He hadn't even noticed. To him, it was nothing. Just an obstacle in the way. But to her, it was everything. "I didn't see it," Lorenzo lied. "You did." Natalia looked at him for the first time since the beginning of the match. "You looked at me." And kept walking. The silence weighed between them. The crowd around watched, but no one dared speak. The cameras kept recording. Lorenzo felt his throat tighten. He wanted to say something, justify himself, explain that he was in a hurry, that he had bigger problems. But looking into those eyes, he realized there was no possible justification. "Your move," Natalia said, returning to the board. Lorenzo forced himself to think. He analyzed the possibilities. He had 3 possible moves, but all of them led to defeat. It was only a matter of time. He could try to prolong it, drag the game out, but the result was inevitable. The girl had built such a perfect net that there was no escape. "How long do you play each day?" he asked, still searching for a way out on the board. "All day. From when the sun rises until it gets dark." "Does your mother allow it?" "My mother works. I take care of my brother here in the square while she's away. We play together sometimes." Lorenzo moved the pawn. A useless move, he knew. Natalia responded with surgical precision. The noose tightened. He now had only 2 important pieces left on the board. She still had 4. What if I offered you a job? Lorenzo suddenly said. At my company. I could train you. Pay for private school. You have talent. Natalia stopped. Her hands hovered over the board. She looked at Lorenzo with an expression he couldn't decipher. Anger? Contempt? Pity? I don't want your job, she said slowly. I want you to keep your word. The sentence echoed through the square. Some in the crowd murmured in approval. Lorenzo felt his face heat up. He was used to buying solutions, negotiating exits. But there on that plastic chair, in front of that girl, money solved nothing. What Lorenzo didn't know was that Natalia had been preparing for that moment her entire life. Not specifically to play against him, but to face men like him. Men who thought the world belonged to them just because they had money. 3 years earlier, when her grandfather was still alive, he had told a story. One day, my granddaughter, you will play the most important match of your life. And it won't be for money. It will be for dignity. Natalia hadn't understood at the time. Now she understood perfectly. She moved the queen. Lorenzo froze. Sweat ran down the side of his face, even with the cool night air. He studied the board for 2 full minutes. The crowd held its breath. Even the children had stopped making noise. Are you losing on purpose? Natalia asked. What? Lorenzo raised his eyes, surprised. You made 3 moves in a row that only made your position worse. You know how to play better than that. I've seen your interviews. You were a regional champion when you were 20. Lorenzo went silent. How did she know that? He never talked about the past. He had erased every reference to that period of his life. The poor boy who played chess in neighborhood tournaments no longer existed. Or at least he wasn't supposed to. SEU Tobias told me, Natalia continued. He remembers you. He said you used to play here in this same square, 30 years ago. On the chair where I'm sitting now. The old newspaper vendor waved from a distance, leaning on his cane. Lorenzo recognized him. Of course. Tobias had always been there. A silent witness to everything. To the poor boy who left the square to conquer the world. And to the rich man who returned only to destroy a child's chessboard. That was a long time ago, Lorenzo murmured. Not that long, Natalia touched the broken knight beside the chair. My grandfather said you never forget where you came from. You just pretend to forget when it's convenient. The words pierced Lorenzo like arrows. He wanted to stand up, leave, cancel that ridiculous bet. But the cameras were recording. The crowd grew every minute. Some people were filming with their phones. If he quit now, it would be public humiliation. If he continued, it would be guaranteed defeat. Your move, Natalia reminded him. Lorenzo took a deep breath. He moved the knight, attempting a desperate defense. Natalia didn't hesitate. Her bishop took position. Now there was only one possible path left for Lorenzo's king. A single move that would delay the inevitable for 2 more turns. How did you learn to play like this? Lorenzo asked, genuinely curious now. My grandfather taught me that chess is about seeing what others don't see. He was a janitor at a private school. He saw rich kids having lessons with international masters. He stood at the classroom door, pretending to clean, but he was learning. At night, at home, he taught me everything. Lorenzo felt something strange in his chest. Something like shame, but deeper. His mother did the same thing. She cleaned offices of big companies and came home telling him what she saw, what she heard, how the powerful spoke and acted. She wanted her son to learn. To become one of them. And he had become one. But in the process, he forgot who he was. Check again, Natalia said. Lorenzo moved the king. There was only 1 square left. One last move before the end. The crowd sensed it. Some began to applaud even before the finish. Lorenzo looked around. Faces of workers. Simple people. People like he had once been. People like his mother had been. Before you finish, Lorenzo said, his voice trembling, I need to know. What are you going to do with the money? If you win. Natalia didn't need to think. I'm going to buy my brother's medicine. I'm going to pay my mother's debts. I'm going to fix our house. And I'm going to save the rest to study. I want to be a teacher. A teacher. Lorenzo blinked. With 200 million, you can be anything. A businesswoman. An investor. I want to teach chess to children like me, Natalia said firmly. Children no one sees. Children no one believes in. Lorenzo lowered his head. For the first time in decades, he felt like crying. Natalia moved the queen. The silence that followed was deafening. Checkmate, she said. Lorenzo looked at the board. His king was trapped. There was no escape. There were no more moves. The game was over. And he had lost. The square exploded in shouts. People jumped, hugged each other, cried. Some raised their fists to the sky as if that victory were theirs too. And in a way, it was. Natalia had won for all of them. For every invisible person. For every ignored worker. For every dream crushed by people who thought money could buy everything. Lorenzo remained motionless. His hands trembled over the board. The cameras moved closer, capturing every second of that moment. One of the reporters was already shouting into a phone, broadcasting the news live. The billionaire lost. The poor girl won. 200 million. Natalia held out her hand. You promised. Lorenzo looked at the small, calloused hand. Then he looked at his own fingers, soft, with nails done at an expensive salon. He had promised. In front of everyone. With cameras recording. But 200 million? It was a fortune even for him. I need to make a transfer, Lorenzo said, pulling his phone out of his pocket. It will take a few days. Nosio Tobias stepped forward, striking his cane on the ground. You promised now. Pay now. That's not how it works, Lorenzo stood up, trying to regain control. It's 200 million. No one carries that in their pocket. Then you lied, a voice shouted from the crowd. Liar, another person echoed. He was never going to pay. More voices joined in. The situation began to grow tense. Lorenzo felt the crowd closing in. His security guards took a step forward, but they were outnumbered. 50 people, maybe 100 by now, surrounded the square. And all of them looked at him with something between anger and contempt. Calm down, people. Lorenzo raised his hands. I will pay. I just need time to make the transfer properly. You have your bank app on your phone, don't you? Natalia asked, her voice firm. My mother uses it. She transfers money every day on her phone. Lorenzo froze. The girl was right. He had the app. He had access to the account. He could make the transfer now. But 200 million? All at once? That would draw the attention of auditors, the bank, the authorities. There would be questions. Investigations. This will complicate my tax situation, Lorenzo tried to argue. That's not my problem. Natalia crossed her arms. You made the bet. You lost. Pay. One of the men in the crowd stepped forward. Then another. In seconds, dozens of people advanced, forming a tight circle around Lorenzo. The guards tried to intervene, but were restrained by the mass of people. Are you threatening me? Lorenzo shouted, panic beginning to take hold. We're collecting, Nosio Tobias replied. The difference is that we don't have expensive lawyers to do it. We have the truth. And witnesses. At that moment, Lorenzo realized something terrible. Every phone in the square was pointed at him. Recording. Filming. Broadcasting live. He wasn't just facing a crowd. He was facing the entire world. It's going viral, a young man shouted, looking at his phone. 3 million views in 10 minutes. Everyone is watching. Lorenzo felt his legs weaken. 3 million people. Watching him refuse to pay a bet he himself had made. Watching him try to run from a barefoot child. The reputation he had built over decades was collapsing in real time. Please. A different voice cut through the chaos. It was an older woman, making her way through the crowd. She was holding a photo in her hands. Please, Mr. Lorenzo, look at this. She held out the photo. Lorenzo took it, confused. It was an old, faded image. It showed a woman in a cleaning uniform, smiling tiredly at the camera. Beside her, a boy of about 10 years old, holding a chessboard. "My sister worked with your mother," the woman said, her voice trembling. "They cleaned the same building. Your mother always talked about you. About the son who was going to be someone in life. Who was going to do things differently." Lorenzo looked at the photo. He recognized the boy immediately. It was him. And the woman next to his mother, he remembered her too. Aunt Rosa, his mother used to call her. Lorenzo held the photo with both hands. The tears came before he could stop them. 30 years of success, of building an empire, of denying the past, collapsed in that instant. He saw his mother in that image, still young, tired but smiling. Always smiling at him. "She died proud of you," the woman continued. "She used to say her son had won in life." "But I didn't win," Lorenzo whispered, more to himself. "I just ran away." He looked at Natalia. The girl remained steady, holding the broken knight against her chest. Waiting. Not with anger, but with patience. The same patience his mother had when he promised that one day he would buy her a better house. A promise he only fulfilled when she was no longer alive to see it. Lorenzo unlocked his phone. His hands trembled so much that he entered the password wrong twice. On the third attempt, he managed to open the banking app. The screen showed numbers that would make any ordinary person faint. Account balances, investments, assets. Money he had accumulated by stepping on people like Natalia. "What's your full name?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Natalia dos Santos Ferreira." Lorenzo typed the name. Then the CPF she provided. His fingers hovered over the amount. 200 million. It was a lot of money. But looking at that girl, at the crowd around them, at the photo of his mother in his hands, Lorenzo realized something. The money had never truly been his. It was the product of a system that allowed some to have everything while others had nothing. He typed the amount. Checked it 3 times. Took a deep breath. And pressed confirm. Natalia's phone, an old device with a cracked screen, vibrated in the pocket of her dress. She took it out, looked at it, and her eyes widened. The crowd held its breath. "It arrived," she said, her voice almost inaudible. The square erupted again. Shouts, hugs, tears. SEU Tobias leaned on his cane and cried openly. The woman who had brought the photo hugged Lorenzo, who stood frozen, not knowing how to react to the affection. "Wait," Lorenzo said loudly, asking for silence. The crowd slowly calmed down. He looked at Natalia. "There's one more thing." Everyone grew tense. Natalia took a step back. "Relax," Lorenzo smiled for the first time that night, a tired but genuine smile. "I want to apologize to you. Publicly. For the board I broke this morning. And for treating you as if you were invisible." He knelt down. Right there on the dirty ground of the square, with his $5,000 suit touching the dust, Lorenzo Ashford knelt before an 11-year-old girl. "I'm sorry," he said. "Truly." Natalia looked at him. Then she looked at the broken knight in her hands. She thought of her grandfather. Of what he would say at that moment. And she knew. "Get up," Natalia held out her hand. "No one needs to stay on their knees." Lorenzo took her hand and stood up. The crowd applauded. The cameras captured everything. The video that already had millions of views now showed not only the victory of a poor girl, but the redemption of a rich man. "What are you going to do now?" Lorenzo asked. "I'm going home." Natalia carefully put away the broken knight. "My mother must be worried. And my brother needs his medicine early tomorrow." "Can I take you?" Lorenzo offered. "My car is over there." Natalia looked at the imported car. Then she looked at SEU Tobias, who nodded encouragingly. "All right," she agreed. As they walked, Lorenzo stopped and looked back. The board was still on the plastic chair. The imperfect pieces scattered. That place that had once been his. That now belonged to Natalia. And that would always belong to the invisible, the forgotten, those who dream despite everything. "You know," Lorenzo said, "my mother was right. She always said that a person only truly wins when they help others win too." "My grandfather said the same thing," Natalia smiled. Night completely covered the square. Little by little, people went home, taking with them the story they would tell for years. The story of the girl who defeated the billionaire. not only at chess, but in humanity. And if you made it this far and enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and tell us in the comments what you thought and where you're watching from. Every story like this deserves to be shared, because it reminds us that dignity has no price, and justice sometimes happens in the hands of those we least expect.